we're back, and today we're gonna do a sort of ride or die tutorial. I'm gonna be using products that I've been using non-stop recently. Some products I've been using for forever, so if you're a long-time subscriber, you'll probably remember most of these. And also brushes and everything. Every time I want something basic but cute and glam, this is what I go for, or if I'm lazy, this is just like my go-to routine. First of all, we're gonna start by applying the primer, and this is the Pixi Flawless Beauty Primer, and this has been with me for years. This is actually my second one. Ooh. Lately, I've been loving this e.l.f. Ultimate Blending Brush to apply my primer with. It's super fluffy, and you know, you just don't have to have your hands digging in. This gives off a subtle shimmer, and it's very glowy and subtle, but it also gives like a light tint to it, so be careful. Like when I apply my makeup on it, it's so full coverage that it doesn't really matter. But if you have a sheer base, then maybe take that into consideration. One of my latest obsessions, and you can spot this on my Sephora full face tutorial. It's a fairly new love. It's their Luminizer to go in the shade Miss Sparkling, and the packaging is just so cute. I love applying this on top of makeup as well. It's a really beautiful highlighter, and that's how I used it there. But I also love applying it under my base. I'm using a very full coverage base, and when I apply Luminizer underneath, it's just, there's like a glow from within happening. So now let's move into the foundation. And actually for my foundation, I've been using a combination of two products. They were two very amazing products that I gave glowing reviews about, so they will be in the description box. Any video that I mentioned where I first got to know the products that I'm talking about, or anything like that, or a dedicated review, will be down below. So basically, I really love the Huda foundation, but it is a little more towards the dry skin side. And the Tarte Shape Tape is a little bit more matte. And so I love mixing the two, and it gives off like a not even semi-matte, it's still pretty glowy. And I don't know, the formulas just work together. Mixing it in. And I'm gonna use the Tarte Shape Tape blender. I've been using this non-stop since I lost my beauty blender, and honestly, this is just as good. So this and all beauty blenders are my go-to for base, always and forever. And this is the only sponge, like, I'm pretty skeptical about my sponges. So I'm not saying like this or any sponge, I'm saying like this is the only sponge that I can match to the beauty blender. And I usually do each side at a time. I don't know why I've been doing that, but I think it's just because it's easier and I don't want things to set before I get in there, basically. Oh my god, look at that finish. And then I go just for second layers and stuff like that on the most pigmented areas with the pointy part, and just do it. And then honestly, my favorite under eye concealer in terms of texture is Becca's Aqua Luminous something concealer, but even the lightest shade is too dark for this shade of foundation, which is my neck. I used to use foundations that were a bit darker and just fade to my neck, but I've really been liking just matching my neck. It's just so much easier and it's so much more effortless. And I haven't found a good enough concealer for under eye that has this shade that kind of matches this shade. And because of that, I've just been using this foundation anyway under eye because it's so seamless and perfect. It just works. But if you know of any concealers, honestly, I'd go for very creamy and hydrating but decent covering concealers. Like the Becca one, I really like the Becca one. I just wish they had like a teeny bit of a wider, a paler shade. And powdering with my By Terry Hydra powder. It is the only powder I've used since I found it. Honestly, it's the best powder. I've had the same tub for about 2 years. It's just barely running out now. So it's like a very finely milled, blurring and perfecting powder, but at the same time, it's very hydrating. So it's not drying at all. It's super good if you want, like if you need a setting powder but you feel like every powder dries you out. I think this is the best one I found that doesn't do that. And it's very comfortable, but at the same time blurs like pores, and it just makes you look really flawless. And just a tiny little bit after powdering, I'm gonna go back just into this imperfection right here because it's the most pigmented one. And sometimes I do this after powdering just because when you powder, eventually you take a bit of the coverage away. And when you do this after powdering, it just has a bigger like staying power. So again, I've used this in almost every eye tutorial I have. This is my Nabla Morning Glory eyeshadow cream eyeshadow. I really like this because it's very nudey for my skin tone. It just really matches it and cancels everything out. This was my first assembled Z palette and my first like singles or Makeup Geek, and they continue to be some of my most used, as you can see. Especially the like neutral ones have a bit of a dent to it. I'm gonna use my favorite ever like transition shade. This is Makeup Geek's Peach Smoothie. Oh, and I forgot to say, but the brush I was using for the powder is actually been discontinued. But this is from the brand Nancy brushes, and I really like their brushes, so check them out as well. I mostly use ZOEVA's eye brushes or Sigmas. For the transition, I like to use either the 221 or the 228 from ZOEVA. The 228 is a little bit more pointed, but they are really similar. And I really like this because it is such an innocent shade. So for all over lid, we're gonna go with Frappé, also by Makeup Geek. And I'm gonna be using a 227 by ZOEVA. This is probably my favorite eyeshadow brush that I think is like a starter that you need in every kit. And it's the one I use mostly for all over lids. And I'm gonna mix it up with a little bit of Homecoming as well. It's like I'm swirling in Frappé and then just touching in Homecoming. Pop it all over the lid. It's a very warm look, very matte look, even though we add a little bit of Homecoming. You can then go into Homecoming a little bit more and just pop it on the center. And this is what I do. If I have like a really boring outfit, I'll pop a little bit of Anastasia Beverly Hills Eye Champagne. If I have an outfit that has a lot going on, I'll just leave as is. For the center pop kind of thing, I love the ZOEVA 234, which is a very detailed depositing brush. I usually just wet it a little bit. This is actually the only single by ABH that I have. And you can go like as popping as you want. If it's a night event, I'll go layering that shit like a motherfucker. For the lower lash line, there's two brushes I really like depending on the type of look I'm going for. There's the E34 and the E20. So this is a very dense one. So if I want a very pronounced one, I go with this. But today I'm gonna go with this because it's very subtle. So we're gonna go back into Frappé and just do a little bit of a shadow. And you can also blend it up a little bit. If you want to add a little more depth, and if you're going for a darker look and still want to continue with this, and especially if you're popping more of that ABH shadow, you can also use Makeup Geek's Cocoa Bear, which is a little bit more deep than Frappé. And you can go into the crease and lower lash line a bit more. My favorite brush to do so in this little crease thing is either the Morphe E22 if you're going for the fused look. If you're going for a very detailed look, I still like the ZOEVA 231, which is very detailed, as you can see. But I'm not gonna deepen it, I'm just gonna go ahead with it. So before you finish the look, you can either go back into Peach Sorbet, or you can just go ahead with the tiny bit left on it and just buff everything around. And then as a final stuff, because I don't really like boring makeup, I'm gonna go into one of my favorite Makeup Geek eyeshadows of all time, which is I'm Peachless. And this is a duochrome eyeshadow. Mine has like the biggest dent because it is genuinely one of my favorite eyeshadows ever. And you can go with the pinky or you can go with the ZOEVA 231 that I mentioned before as well. When I do this, I usually don't use the highlighter for inner corner. So it's a very peachy, kind of creamy shadow, but then it has a duochrome shift that makes it almost like neon bright in a peach mode. And babes, this has been, I think, since my first ever tutorial. First, we start with the Jane Iredale Pure Lash Conditioner. It's, I think, my fourth packaging of this, and it actually lasts a surprisingly amount of time. And it just gives a little bit of a prep and kind of definition to the lashes before the mascara goes in. So it makes them a little bit fatter, a little bit more workable, more moldable, and I really like that. And I've tried a lot of primers, but this is definitely my favorite. While we let that set in, of course, we're gonna go ahead with the Anastasia Beverly Hills. It didn't used to have, but now it has like a dual-sided brush. So we have a brush with really long bristles and one with short ones. So I start with the long part and just brush it all over. And then go in with the little short part and just do the parts that need a little bit more color and definition, which is usually the end tail, even though I don't like very defined brows, as you know. And then just go a final round with a large brush. And while we're doing this, we're also waiting for the eyelash primer to settle a little so that it has a little bit more hold when you go over with the mascara, because if you do it right away, the mascara won't hold off as much. Before we go back to the lashes, I like to cup them. It's kind of an old school trick that I still do, but sometimes I keep off camera because I don't want to make the videos too long. But if we're talking about go-to things, it just makes them a little bit more curlier. And while they have a little bit of, not dry, not liquid, but a damp product on, it does make a whole lot of difference. And then I go in with my telescopic mascara by L'Oreal in the shade black. There's also an extreme black, which is not too bad, but this one is my personal favorite. I've bought this so many times I don't even know. This has been my go-to mascara since I was in 9th grade. I was 13, 14 in 9th grade, so this has been in my life for that long. I always go back to this. I try other stuff, but this is the one that makes my lashes go bam and wow, and you know, it would just, because my lashes are very, very flat and pygmy. When I put this combination of primer and mascara, they don't look pygmy. So this is 2 layers of mascara on top on 1 layer of primer. But the 2 layers of mascara, I don't double dip. So I dip, I do, I dip, I do, and then I do. Does that make sense? Again, I think if you're an old soul, you know that my favorite highlighter is the Laura brush highlighter. The Laura Geller highlighter in the shade Peach Glow. And they have other shades. I have most of their shades. But this is the one I just seem to go to again and again and again. And the brush I like to use for this specific highlighter is the ZOEVA 129 Luxe Fan Brush. But there's also another really, really good ZOEVA highlighter brush, which is more like, it's pointed and dedicated. I think it's the 114. And that one I use for more subtle highlighters or when I will really, really want a bam kind of look. It just looks really subtle and like glow from within. But it is also like quite powerful. And now, before the lash is completely dry, we cup them again a little bit. I don't usually now highlight my Cupid's bow because I have a lot of scarring due to acne and it just makes the scarring look worse. Like, I like the idea of it, but every time I did, I was like, oh, fuck. There I go again. Now we're gonna go into my bronzer, and my favorite bronzer at the moment is the Benefit Cosmetics Hoola Lite. So the Hoola one is like called makeup product, and this one is the lightest version that came out this year. It's not too great, it's not too warm, it's just that sweet spot that I really like. And my favorite brush at the moment is the ZOEVA 101 Face. It's like this kind of blob. Dip it in there. I always like to do my nose a little because it gives you like that sun-kissed look, and that's always good. I have to say my most used blush product ever is the Nude Spectrum Blush Palette by ZOEVA because it is so nude and it has everything, and when I'm lazy I go to it. When I'm doing really heavy eye looks I go to it because it's basic. When I'm doing really colorful things, I don't want to like clash, so I go to it. So it's really like my go-to. This one is the shade that I use the least, but I like to like mix these 3 at my will. So right now I use, for example, these 2. And the brush I'm using is the Real Techniques blush brush that I love. I didn't know how to use it at the beginning. I thought it was kind of weird, but now I'm loving it. I don't know why. And this just really complements the bronzer shade as well. Now what happens now is that sometimes the coverage kind of goes away a little bit because of all the brushing. I go again with my beauty blender. I go into the Tarte one, try to carefully place it without being too harsh, because if you're too harsh then it's gonna be like a white area around the blush. So what I try to do is a little bit. So then I go right into the blush with the blender and just see, that's not as bad. And finally we go to lips. Before we go to lips, I usually do this because it's so much easier to control like the shape of the lip when you conceal underneath, because then you don't have to worry about your own redness peeking through like the outlines. And forget about my crackled lips, you know what's happening, acne medication. For my lips, my fave is this Sephora cream lip stain that I've used over and over and over again, so you probably already know it. I'm sorry. It's the best. I love the formula. I love this shade. This particular shade is just it's nude and it's blushy and it's not too pink, but it's still a little bit pink, and it's really great. I love it. Super creamy. And it lasts a real long time without being too dry. And of course, it's a liquid lipstick, but it's like a creamy liquid lipstick, and I really like it. Super opaque, a million different colors, and it's just perfect. So if they're too defined, in particular today they're not too defined, but if they're too defined, I'll just do this. And be careful because it stains, so use another finger to do the rest, like here, just before it dries. Here, and it just blurs a little bit of the edge out, so there's no like harsh lines. Finally, I've been using the ColourPop setting spray for quite a while now, and it's been my go-to lately. I also really like the Pixi one, the Mixing Fist. Ooh, it's super fresh. Don't actually, when you put Mixing Fist or just regular hydrating mist or whatever, I said Mixing Fist. When you put Fixing Mist, just don't close your eyes too soon because it can just ruin the eye makeup, so just stay like this for a little bit. And also, if you want to go ahead and cup again, I always do, because you know I love them big lashes. And this is pretty much it. So I think I've covered it all. If there's anything that I'm missing, please let me know in the comments. Let me know if you tried any of these products and what you think about them, and what are your go-to products, because always looking for new ones right here, you know? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the little bell button so you know every single time I'm uploading. And I'm also uploading now loads of like short makeup tutorials on Instagram, so go check it out if you haven't yet. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.